Greetings, friends. Welcome to our Spirituality and Cancer webinar. We have 120 people registered for this from all over the world and feeling so grateful for that. My name is Anne McMullen and I am the IWMF's Wellness Program Coordinator. I'm also a yoga therapist, and one of our goals at the IWMF is to provide you with tools that address the layers of your body, mind, and spirit, and to make sure that our wellness program sees you not as a patient, but as a whole person. And that is why I'm so thrilled to introduce this webinar. It's our first offering that really addresses the spiritual layer to such a degree. Research, as we are finding out, has shown that some form of spirituality can offer individuals coping with cancer more hope, meaning, peace, and a better quality of life. Our wonderful guest speaker, David Maginley, is quite an expert in this realm. Just sharing a little bit about him. For 25 years, David has provided psychospiritual care for the cancer, palliative, and intensive care units at a major Canadian hospital. He has degrees in philosophy, and he is an ordained minister, and he has a deep sense of purpose in supporting others in their spiritual journey through his private practice and international presentations. He's also written a beautiful book, Beyond Surviving Cancer and Your Spiritual Journey. And I can't wait to hear David's presentation. But before we do, I want to take a quick moment to thank the IWMF staff for being here and to remind you to type your questions into the chat. Stay muted. We'll have some time for question and answer period at the end. And I also want to thank our dear Waldenstrom's friend, Gail Ferguson, who joins us today from Nova Scotia as an Atlantic Waldenstrom's support group co-leader who was diagnosed with Waldenstrom's in 2017. She is also a childhood friend of David's, our experts. And I wanted Gail to just offer us a few words on how David's work has maybe affected her, or anything she might want to share to kind of kick us off, to help us to get to know David a little better before we dive in. Thanks so much, Gail.
Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, David. My name is Gail Ferguson, and I am a WM patient, and I am a support group leader for the region of Atlantic Canada. I'm really thrilled to introduce David for more reasons than just the inspiration, strength, and peacefulness that will be imparted to you today. As Anne just said, David is a spiritual counselor and public speaker and a four-time cancer survivor with a rare cancer starting at the age of 17. David is a childhood friend. His mom and my mom were best friends. He was actually born in Dartmouth, and the very first house my husband and I owned, David had moved back to Nova Scotia and came to see us. And he's like, wait a second, 3 doors down is the home I was brought home to from the hospital. So we have these connections. He did grow up out in Vancouver, and we could see once in a while they'd come to Cape Breton to visit, and then his family moved to Cape Breton, and his mother was my piano teacher, and David and my brother, they went to school together. They're the same age. They were the Star Wars experts at the time, and both of them went on to pursue an education and career in divinity and theology. My brother's a minister in Montreal with United Church Canada. Overall, to me, David is a friend. He is also a mentor and a guide to me and my husband through my own journey with cancer, which started 6 years ago. David kindly came to see me and to check up on Scott for each plasma apheresis and bendamustine rituximab chemo treatment over six months here. I could hear his voice when I read his book, Beyond Surviving Cancer and Your Spiritual Journey. He did since record and release an audiobook of that book. And I remember when I told him, it's like, David, I'm reading your book and I can't sleep at night. And I hear you, and it's just really helps me. It really uplifts me. And I can hear your voice speaking it, which is amazing. I think I'm really lucky. but you all can too. It's in audio. Um, so again, I welcome you all to this session, and I invite you to embrace the warmth, serenity, and hopefulness that David will provide to you today. Welcome, David.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Gail. Thanks everyone for inviting me into your home from across the world. It's an honor to be here. Um, yeah, that audiobook, I've had some people comment that my voice has helped them fall asleep at night, and I tell them, well, you can come to church every Sunday, and I'll do the same thing to you. Uh, it's a beautiful surprise to realize how your work and life is affecting other people, and I'm honored to get that feedback from them. It's great to be here. So, spirituality and cancer. I'm excited always to talk about this because we're going to go in directions you may never have suspected. Uh, and to kick it off, I want to hear from you. If you can put in the chat section, what is spirituality? Uh, I'd like to get a sense of how do you experience it, because it is as unique as each person. So just type your comments in the chat section. What is spirituality for you? And you're so right in identifying that research shows spirituality is incredibly helpful in helping people navigate through crisis. It tends to ground you in the best of yourself at the worst of times, right? So that's why I want to learn from you. What is it? Carolyn, you say connection to something bigger and beyond ourselves. So that is a universal aspect. A lot of people identify that. Um, Connection with something larger, right? That is like a loving mother, and Grace has given us that. Beautiful. How I relate with the universe. Um, Peace and calm from God's force beyond me, right? Connection, right? My sense of the vastness of life. Oh, you see, I'm talking to some experts here. Spirituality, Jean says, apart from religion, is a state of being in which one seeks to connect beyond the self, right? So, bingo, it's this um, ephemeral and yet very lived experience uh, of something that expands your consciousness and your connection to everything. Emily, I used to think it was belief in the world beyond myself and the sense of interaction with it. And nature was the best way to connect. Yes, the original cathedral. Uh, I want to touch on that. I want to come back to nature, connection to our soul, true self, a balance, inner and outer balance, right? Finding your authentic true self. So, boy, you're touching on some critical themes of what spirituality is. Um, I want to pull up the ubiquitous slides. I hope you don't mind. And I'm afraid they are a bit more text than they are pictures, but we're going to touch upon some of these slides. Uh, you know that PowerPoint slides are just there to help the presenter navigate. So this is the second question. How does spirituality impact your experience of cancer? So that's where the rubber hits the road. Can you identify the difference that it makes for you? I'm going to stop sharing there because I want to read your comments. For me, as you type your comments, I just want to share, I had a rare kind of cancer called paranganglioma. Its full name is um, non-chromatophin paranganglioma. And it's a kind of tumor that grows like an extra adrenal gland. And when your adrenal gland turns on, it's a trigger and it causes the tumor to explode with chemicals. And most of the time you die within about 30 seconds. So I'm very lucky to be alive, thanks to my great medical team and whatever mystery is out there. And it certainly embedded me in this journey, this spiritual journey, to ask the same questions you're probably asking. Who am I? What is my life about? What is my connection to everything? How do I find meaning, purpose, belonging? Right? Jody, boy, thank you, Jody. understanding this is how it impacted, spirituality impacted, understanding that I'm going to die and that it's okay to prepare for that and prepare to live for the time I have left. Yeah, it's a recalibration of our consciousness to the essential, the awareness of mortality with which we negotiate throughout the healthcare crisis. Jean, still trying to figure this out, recently diagnosed. Oh, our hearts out to you, Jean. Hoping to find the connection between my spirituality and cancer. Not there yet. Well, I'm glad you're here. For myself, I was not, well, I was brought up in sort of a religious home, Anglican, was confirmed, went to church, but after that, not so much. And my spiritual journey continued unconsciously within me, but amplified by the healthcare crisis. Lisa, my faith grounds me, helps me to see beyond only here and now. Yeah. Helps you to see to when you are a memory for your children and hopefully their future children, right? I can let go of what seemed important before and find out what really matters. Thank you, Christine. Emily, since my diagnosis of a rare bone marrow cancer 3 years ago, I've been spiritually lost. Oh, cut off and adrift. Yeah. So glad you're here. So glad. I want to go back to those slides. I'm just going to share a couple of definitions. One is standard medical definition by a medical researcher, and the other is my definition. So Christina Pachalski, she does great research on the impact of spirituality on the cancer journey. She identifies it's the aspect of humanity that refers to the way people seek and express meaning and purpose. And the way their experience is connectedness to the moment, the self, others, nature, and the significant or sacred. So, of course, it's much bigger than religion. Again, it's about who and what am I? How am I connected to everything? And how am I connected to life itself? Right? These are fundamental existential explorations, which we all must do, but many do it unintentionally until a crisis like cancer comes along, and that accelerates our awakening and our investigation of these central matters. I like to say that spirituality is the immanent and transcendent sense of the numinous. I'll pause there. Numinous is a word that means something that is mysterious and so much vast and larger than you, something other and yet foundational. Numinous is a term coined by the Lutheran theologian, I'm Lutheran, Rudolf Otto, and it means something that can both swallow you and destroy you, and yet that you are drawn to, you are attracted to. So there's a very primal and existentially sensual aspect to it. That's interesting. And yet it's so vast that it pulls you into nothing wiser than silence itself and full presence. If there's a takeaway, please take a couple of notes. This is one of the takeaways. The quality of presence you have with yourself is going to determine the quality of your experience of life and your encounter with other people. Your spirituality begins and ends with the quality of presence you have with yourself. In fact, that quality requires that you get out of your own way. I'll explain in a bit. So it's this immanent, it's internal, and yet transcendent sense of this presence that's privately experienced, but it's corporately expressed in every aspect of your humanity. Everything you do reveals your spirituality. Religion is a subset of spirituality, and you can see, some of the overlaps in that. So before proceeding with distracting slides, let's do an experiment. This is a very simple and yet profound spiritual meditation. It's not going to take long, and it's designed to calibrate your consciousness to the grounded being and what you fundamentally are. Okay? So here we go. Here we go. You can do this with your eyes open or closed. I'd like you to be comfortable, so adjust your seat if necessary. I'd like you first just listen to the room and to my voice. Listen to any sounds that may be in your environment. So I can hear my fridge. I can hear my tinnitus. I can hear my own voice. Please allow all of the sounds to be there in your environment. Open and welcome them. Listen. So notice how doing this requires no effort. It's just allowing. And now I'd like you to listen in the same manner to your body. Listen to any sensations you may have, even if they are unpleasant, and allow them in the same way that you allow and accept the noise in the room. We're tuning in. So I appreciate Irene's comment. She has back pain. I'm also dealing with back pain and have a TENS machine running at the moment. So I'm feeling and listening to the sensations of that. Allow it, even the unpleasant. And now I'd like you to gently step back and notice your thoughts. Listen to your thoughts as the noise inside of you, just as you're listening to the noise outside of you. Do not in any way try to stop your thoughts. Try not to be caught up with them. Just step back and look at them flowing. Most of us have a thought every 3 to 5 seconds. So you are a leaf on the flowing water. You are not a rock in the water. You're just allowing the flow, whatever is in this moment. Now I'd like you to notice your feelings in the same way. Just step back and look at the flow. And now a very gentle, subtle maneuver. I'd like you to step back and watch your entire experience and get in touch with that quality of awareness. Do not be surprised if your thoughts interrupt you and try to pull you in one direction or another. But notice when you're trying to understand. Notice when you're trying to label an experience. Step back and watch even that. Okay. Now, if your eyes are closed, you can open your eyes. We'll come back to the room. And as you do, notice the way your mind and your experience of this moment and yourself shifts back to a, a state of listening and understanding. Okay. If you would type into the chat section, what was that quality of awareness like? Can you put any words to it that are accurate? A lot of people find this a slippery thing. Tanya, it was grounding, peace. Anne says it was very still, calm, and peace. Thank you, Patty. What a lovely thing to feel, right? It's relaxing. A soft openness. Oh, yeah, Catherine. Judy, aliveness. So there was a vitality about it, and yet a depth, flowing peace, clarity, right? Well, you guys are really good at this. Those words are really accurate. Irene, the ability to accept whatever is occurring is difficult for me, but doing it with the group makes it possible. Yeah. Yeah. The effect of this sort of exercise is amplified when you're in a group, even online. Right? So notice how this is a relaxing of your consciousness. It's actually a relaxing of your attachment to your experience. Opened up the human to the being. Oh, Gail, can I quote you? That is brilliant. Receptive, right? Reality. Okay. Now, that didn't take us long at all, but it reconnected you to what's called the ground of being. It reconnected you to what is perennial and unchanging, which is awareness. All of your thoughts, all of your feelings, all of your experiences, and every cell in your body has changed over your lifetime, sometimes second to second, other times it took 10 years for deep bone tissue cells to be replaced. But everything has been transitory. What is the one fundamental thing, the perennial essential aspect that never changes? It is awareness itself. So I'm going to propose to you, before we go deeper, something that may sound outrageous. This is what the religious traditions call the peace of God. This is it. So gentle, so innocuous, so still, so perplexingly accessible. And I would propose to you that if the spirit, if the source, if the ground of being, if the divine realm, if the fundamental consciousness from which reality emanates is indeed real, then it must be the easiest thing to access and the most universal thing to access. And it must be constant beneath all the noise. Cancer has a way of amplifying and attenuating, calibrating us to this, even as our mind and our heart is going crazy with worry. I'm going to go back to my slides because I want to explore with you, how do you deal with that distress, that worry, and so that you can get more familiar and connect to the ground of being. So here it is. This is the purpose, I would propose, of spirituality. It is simply to know yourself as you truly are. Not David, not public speaker, not pastor, not father, not husband, not man, not, right? Not any of the labels or the roles, but simply what I truly am. That's profound. Just going to move my slide down so that, because I'm getting things popping up there. There we go. Okay, so that's the purpose of your spirituality, to know yourself as you truly are. There we go. Small, in a small space. There we go. So this is different than the clothing you wear in your ego. Your ego, I'm doing a very simple model of what is the construct, what is the architecture of our consciousness. The id, there's a simple explanation, right, is the part of you that is impulsive and very primal, and so eat the cake. And the superego says eating cake is bad, and a healthy ego is a moderator between those two things. So, um, I've, well, I would have two pieces because my ego is not so evolved that I can stop myself. Uh, so a lot of people think, oh, he's so egotistical. What does that mean? That's a statement that says you're identifying too strongly with your ego and it's flowing out of your insecurity. Ego or personal identity, right, is a functional process through which consciousness has experience. So if we think of consciousness as that fundamental peaceful state that you touched on, or you can think of consciousness as God or source or mystery or life. Ego is like clothing it puts on in order to experience the incarnate human form. Okay, it's functional when it does that, but ego becomes dysfunctional when it attaches its identity to the experience. And who doesn't do that? It's like watching a movie. Who wants to watch a movie they don't get caught up in? Life is like that. Ego, personality, who and what you are in the world. You want to get caught up in it, but maintain the ability to step back as we did and know that that's not your essential self. It's a wonderful ride. Try to keep it healthy. Uh, I'll share with you that sometimes it's difficult for me because my ego is the part of me I enjoy the most. And I notice when it gets the upper hand. Uh, and fear, anxiety, distress, insecurity. Um, some of those are clear aspects that the ego's integrity feels threatened and it's triggered its defense mechanisms for self-preservation, right? It's not operating out of a sense of openness, connection to everything. It's operating out of a sense of scarcity, limitation, and separation. So these are fundamental spiritual dynamics in coming to appreciate who and what you are in the world. I'm going to skip Rob Van Vierven, but have a look at him on Instagram and be sure to laugh your head off. He's a ridiculous comedian who pretends to be a spiritual guru and just goes nuts with the stuff. What threatens the integrity of your ego's identity, your personal identity, creates existential distress. So let's think of a cancer diagnosis. Wow, nothing's going to threaten it quite like that. Existential distress, that which threatens the integrity of one's identity. So it's temporary, but boy, it can swallow you until you find equilibrium or a way to cope and discover that you're navigating the crisis. I like to say that spirituality never calms the storm, but it teaches you how to surf. And eventually, you realize you can not only surf, but you can swim, and then you can breathe underwater. It's a profound way to awaken to that which you are. This existential distress is universally triggered, but it's usually suppressed because we just want to be calm and in control. And that's why when people ask us, how are you doing? Because they know you have cancer. And you say, I'm fine. And fine means flustered, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. But you're keeping it under control. This is why Richard Rohr, boy, I love his teachings. Richard Rohr says all spirituality is about what we do with our pain. Have a look at him on YouTube. He's a Franciscan priest and great teacher. So spirituality is not something that is activated so much when we're comfortable, but is engaged when we encounter the edges, the limits are that which threatens the integrity of our identity. So that's when it really kicks in. That's its function. That's where it grows the most. And we all have to admit, the periods of growth in our life have usually been the periods of struggle. So what this initiates is a passage of ego construction and deconstruction. So think of this in terms of cancer. This is a fundamental spiritual dynamic. And I hope it doesn't sound too cerebral. When we are born, we don't have an ego, but we have emerged from an environment where we were one with the womb. There was no self and other. You were one. So you were connected to the ground of being physically as well as mysteriously. Yet you had not yet formed a personal identity. Now, you're going to have characteristics wired into you genetically and energetically that will shape your personality, but they're seeds at the moment. And then you're born. So you're moving from the pre-personal realms into an environment in which ego identity will be formed. So suddenly you're in an environment. This causes a contraction of consciousness away from the ground of being, away from fundamental awareness, because now there's a state of separation between you and an other, an environment. Then as you grow in the months ahead, you're realizing there are moving objects in the environment and things that don't move. There are different qualities in the environment. So you're developing increased differentiation and object relations. This is causing a second contraction of consciousness away from the ground of being, a sense of connection to everything. And then you realize that you are a mind in a body. You seem to be looking out at your hand from this apparatus up here. So that is creating the distinction of mind and body, a fundamental split in identity. And this is universal. It's not unhealthy. It's simply the way ego identity forms. Final contraction is where all the material you're not able to integrate into your ego goes into the subconscious, and it keeps piling up in the warehouse there. Then a crisis comes along. Now, your crisis at first is minor. You lose your blanket, your teddy bear, and you cry like the world's coming to an end. We've all done that in the grocery store or heard a child do that. Because we haven't developed object permanence, and our attachment of our identity to that object is now, it's really strong. But then as we grow, we lose more things, experience more change, and this teaches us and trains us for impermanence, right? Non-attachment. So every one of them changes who and what we are in the world. So you lose your keys, you lose your hair, then you begin to lose your health, right? And of course, big events like a divorce or a job change or even changing schools, all of these threaten the integrity of identity, pulling us to change. When you're facing a strong, significant healthcare crisis, you're moving into major change. And that's going through what's called the fields of chaos. Now, along the way, this is rather technical, you're maturing. You're moving from the magical world, right, of the child's imagination to the mythical world as a kid who's told the rules and this is the way the world works. So these mythologies are structures of meaning in the world. You learn them in your family, you learn them in your school, you learn them in your culture. Then, education helps you become a person who can analyze the mythical messages, test them to see if they are true. This is the mental state, and that's where most people remain through most of their life. But a crisis invites you to move into a witness state, which we just practiced, meditation. And that can calibrate you back to the ground of being from which you emerged. Unfortunately, the way that happens most effectively is as you die, because suffering into death deconstructs ego identity in the reverse order that it formed as a process to calibrate you to the final stage of human development, which is transcendence. Well, that was a mouthful, wasn't it? I'm glad you're recording this so you can replay that section. Ego construction and deconstruction is a natural process, but it's going to trigger ego defense mechanisms for self-preservation. And as you resist this process, you will increase your existential distress. But as you open to it, even though it may be tragic, as you open to it, you will find you're moving from tragedy to grace. to a return to the ground of being, that peace that you experienced right there, that sense of connection to everything never fades, never goes away. So here's a little sculpture that I ask an AI to create to illustrate this process. This is a fundamental spiritual process, and cancer accelerates it. It invites us to participate in this. So you're emerging from the distinction between self and other. Now you're born in the environment, living and non-living, moving things in the environment, then the mind body. These are contractions of consciousness. And then it expands. Consciousness reconnects to the grounded being. But it unfortunately is marked by suffering, periods of despair, but at the end, unity consciousness. And we'll touch upon that nature of the transcendence later. So I love this book. I love anything Brene Brown writes. In this book, Imperfection, The Gift of Imperfection, she says, without exception, spirituality, right, which she identifies in many of the ways that you just identified, it emerges as the component of resilience. In fact, her research and others have found it is the most stabilizing force or dynamic within a person's architecture of consciousness that enables them to not only go through cancer, but grow through cancer, to engage the crisis and use it to deepen one's humanity and amplify one's love and open to the mystery of who and what you are. It does not protect you from the reality of cancer. It engages you with it. In fact, here's another bomb I want to drop. In religious terms, the grace of God will protect you from nothing. Nothing. But it will sustain you through everything. That's both comforting and discouraging. But, the grace or the ground of being or this fundamental state of awareness and connection to everything, which I would offer is a good definition of love as the highest state of integrated consciousness, protects you from nothing, but sustains you through everything. Brown and others have found that there are 3 patterns to this spiritual resilience. Think of this in terms of your cancer journey or any struggle you faced. First, it cultivates hope. Not as some future outcome, but hope is a quality of presence here and now that grounds you. You just experienced it as you opened to direct awareness. You felt peaceful, even though you may be in pain. You felt connected. You're no less mortal, but somehow in that connection and, dare I say, love, you feel safe, held, seen, authentic, integrated, no longer hiding any aspect from yourself, no longer suppressing any aspect of yourself. Right? You can be both vulnerable and strong when you're in this state. That's the nature of hope, not the future that you're reaching for, but the present that apprehends you. Second pattern, you're able to practice critical self-awareness. So you can say, oh, I notice my fear is swallowing me. I notice I'm projecting my anxiety on others instead of presenting my anxiety to others. This is helping with emotional intelligence. So instead of saying, well, I'll pull on a current example. Oh, this election nonsense south of the border is driving me nuts. I can't sleep. Right? And then being angry at others instead of saying, I notice that this situation is making me feel very angry. I'm feeling helpless and overwhelmed. It's really frustrating. You're making I statements, not those people that are doing this or that, resulting in me feeling this, but simply, I notice I'm feeling very insecure, very overwhelmed. Critical self-awareness. Be curious about it. I wonder what that emotion's about. My cancer is scaring me so much. What's that about? Oh, well, it's about the gift of life. It's about It's about realizing the problem is not dying, the problem is leaving. I don't want to think about it. And that I noticed that. So that's good critical self-awareness. Letting go of numbing, taking the edge off vulnerability. You just saw me do it. Be vulnerable and strong. Be authentic. Don't be fine, but be integrated and accurate. Okay. Now, in the description for this talk, it did say we were going to explore the nature of consciousness. Well, here's the connection. Spirit may not be a term that people want to use. God may be a term people don't want to use. But the accurate question, the ultimate question, is not, is there a God or is there a spiritual realm? The accurate question is, what is consciousness? This is the biggest mystery to science. They call it the hard problem of consciousness. Yet, the answers to that are hidden within the medical textbooks. I pull on science a lot more than I pull on my own religious tradition. Well, I use it as a modern translation of ancient mysteries. Albert Leninger wrote Principles of Biochemistry. It's still used in medical schools. This is the standard textbook. And in it, he talks about biophotons, light that is being emitted spontaneously from the body, from the DNA, from the cells, especially from the nerves and the myelin sheath around the nerves. And he found that it's a very weak signal. Yet a single photon can affect over 1,000 ion channels within a cell and the cell membrane. The amplitude, meaning the power, and the frequency, how fast that particle of light is vibrating, initiates all metabolic processes. If the frequency and the amplitude are off even a little bit, causes a cascade effect of disruption in the harmony of the cell. This is startling. Cells communicate via light, followed then by electrical and chemical signals. You want to know the connection between consciousness and this physical form, between biology and biography, between spirit and matter. This is the key. Now, when we meditate, we affect the emission of light within our cells, the frequency and the amplitude, and we optimize it, not by trying to be calm, but by tuning in to how we actually feel and think and are in this moment. And then in the stepping back and observing that, that's what initiates the harmony. So it's not putting effort into it. It's getting out of your own way. This was a great study showing that they had cancer patients, people with cancer, and their partners, and they separated them, right, by quite a distance, and they put the people who had cancer in a Faraday chamber, so no electromagnetic waves can get through. Cell phones don't work. Nothing can get through except neutrinos. And then their partners were meditating, sending a compassionate meditation. And what they found was they hooked them up to galvanic skin response monitors, which is what you see on there. And that's measuring the electrical conductivity through the fingers. And what they found was they synchronized over distance. What's doing this? Just your thought. But not only your thought of compassion and love, but how that is resonating in your heart. The Heart Math Institute does a lot of great research on this. By the way, you're going to be getting a resource sheet that has hundreds of articles and videos on this subject. So when your heart and mind are synchronized in a compassionate state of awareness without attachment to outcome, just send in the love, let it flow through, that amplifies the signal. It can be measured outside of your body. So this is sort of spiritual technology. And it harmonizes the body's own metabolic processes. And yes, it can affect the healing process. Specific frequencies. I'm really encouraged by advanced technology in treating glioblastoma. So this is a type of brain tumor, and with surgical interventions, try to debulk and remove the tumor, but it always grows back in 3 to 6 months. I know some patients who survive 2 years, but eventually I'm afraid it's fatal. Now they've identified the harmonic frequencies, which will disrupt mitosis within the cancer cells, but not disturb the healthy tissue around it. So a person puts on a cap and it has emitters on the cap that are aimed at the tumor. And they wear the cap for about 2 hours every day. And you can put a baseball cap over it. And it literally dissolves the tumor by disrupting mitosis using energy and frequencies. Fantastic. No surgery needed. Light therapy is also on the cutting edge of cancer treatment. So we are beings of light, and we're shining with it. Can we get out of our own way to allow the natural process to do it? Here's effective meditation on ultra-weak photon emissions from the hands and forehead. You're shining mostly from here and from here. That's curious because the pituitary gland is in there, and it actually has optical receptors and transmitters, nerves that receive and emit light. And yet it's here. Very interesting. Here's a study I love because I'm a therapeutic touch teacher. I, as a chaplain, would be called in to do this non-contact energy treatment where I'm moving my hands over the cancer patient and I'm focusing on getting out of my way and letting it flow through. And here they're looking at bone cancer, so osteoblasts. So you have osteoblasts, tenocytes, and fibroblasts. Those are the three types of bone tissue. And there's the control group and the therapeutic touch group. And you can see there's a slight improvement in the mineralization and calcification of the bone tissue. This is in Petri dishes, no human subjects involved. So fantastic. Not fanciful, wishful thinking, not voodoo witchcraft, fundamental aspects of who and what we are. So cancer accelerates the awakening to who and what you truly are. It's a bumbling, difficult road, but it results in you realizing, as we all will at the end, that we are part of a wondrous experience of consciousness. Now, either consciousness is an epiphenomenon of the brain emerging from all that neural activity, or as the best of research shows, and an increasing number of scientists are understanding, the brain is a reducing valve for the energy of consciousness to flow through, and it filters out that which is not essential to your biological survival. But the fundamental principles of health and healing start at the energetic level. I encourage you to have a look at Donald Hoffman's work. He's a neuroscientist, and he clarifies for us. You can look at his TED Talk on YouTube. Donald Hoffman. He clarifies that our biological apparatus, our senses, are designed to distort the field of reality to facilitate our biological survival and nothing else. We only see within the visible spectrum of light. If we were to see beyond that, it would be a different kind of reality, but no less real. However, it doesn't help for us to see the entirety of the electromagnetic spectrum and, heaven forbid, the spiritual spectrum, because you'd be so distracted you'd be eaten by a bear or hit by a bus, right? In fact, Hoffman proposes to us that reality itself is an illusion in its appearance, but not in its process. Reality is an illusion in its appearance, but not in its process. Okay. Well, science has been saying that actually for quite a while. Most of what we call physical matter is empty space. It's the movement of atoms, and the distance between the nucleus and the electron is vast. Beyond that is the quantum field, which is outside of time and space and of infinite potential. So we live in a realm in which the potential and infinite becomes the particular and finite. So here you are. The spiritual crisis of cancer invites you into these mysteries. But most of us experience it in a much more pragmatic way. I just want to feel safe. Just want to get through this. I'm not only scared for myself, I'm scared for my loved ones and what this is doing to them. If that is the main burden upon your heart, then beautiful. You are a truly evolved soul. Well done. Way to be a magnificent human being, both broken and beautiful, both mortal and liminal and temporary, as well as infinite and universal and never ending. Sit with the space between those two. If your religious practice gives you strength, wonderful. If you found a church that you can trust and that speaks intelligently to you and supports you in your journey, fantastic. If not, don't worry about it, because if love is the highest state of consciousness, then love is your spiritual practice. If you focus on that, you can't do any better. Love is your spiritual practice. So grow where you're planted. Love where you're at. If you're in unhealthy relationships, be wise and discerning. Step back and watch and understand the dynamics at play. Make wise choices. Do not stay, this is strong, do not stay in toxic relationships that destroy you, but do not leave them without engaging your resources to ground yourself in your authentic truth and your clarity of your voice. Do what you can to help the other person wake up, but don't do their homework for them. In the end, we're all walking each other home. We're all walking each other home. So I remember that vividly because the second time I had cancer out of the four, I did die temporarily, was transformed into a state of being that had such congruency and integrity and alignment and connection to everything and wonder and joy and love and beyond words. And it changed my complete understanding of who and what I am, a near-death experience, but it did not upgrade all the other aspects of myself. It didn't give me super intelligence. It didn't make me superior in my moral character. I'm as foolish a man as I ever was before. How I wish it would have upgraded all aspects of me. But it left me with a taste of that transformation strong upon my tongue and an ability to allow my brokenness and imperfections and have a sense of humor with my ridiculousness and keep stumbling my way home. So I'm going to stop there. We are at the top of the hour. And we have some questions. Welcome any comments. And while you're putting those up, I'm going to find my resource sheet and I'm just going to post it in the comment section where you can download it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. So much to digest and process and think about. And I loved just how powerful the meditation was to kind of get us into that state of awareness. And it's so wonderful to hear so many parallels in the yoga training that I've had with what you described today. We have a quote from the Bhagavad Gita that says, yoga is a journey of the self, through the self, to the self. And I really loved your definition of, we're learning, we're really just trying to know ourselves as part of our sort of spiritual journey. So, guys, I would love it if you would, thank you, Gordon. I would love it if you would type some of your questions into the chat. I know my question, David, you kind of started to answer. I'd wanted to know what happened when you had your near-death experience, and you did sort of explain it. But you've been at the bedside of many dying people, and I'm curious if you have any takeaway from that you would like to share. Maybe that's a different webinar. Maybe that's a totally different webinar.
Well, I can share that in my 25 years, I've heard near-death experiences just about every month, sometimes every week. I'm on the board of the International Association for Near-Death Experiences. That is going to happen to 1 in 10 people who have a brush with death and 1 in 5 people who have a cardiac episode. And it's independent of belief, age, education, maturity, culture, context, time. In history, it's been happening throughout the eons. But it's surprising to realize how much research there really is on it. And that'll be among the resources that I send you.
Beautiful. So we did have a question at the very beginning coming in from Christine Flagler. And friends, if you would just type your questions into the chat, I'll funnel them to David. And then we'll have a period where we stop the recording and you can ask questions directly, and Gail will help us kind of keep our subject matter going for like 15 minutes. Does that work for you, David? An additional 15? Okay, beautiful. Christine had written, how do you see the end of life for someone who has severe dementia, who doesn't know others or who he is? I believe there is meaning in every moment of life, even at the end. But what is the purpose in life for someone like this?
Thank you for that question. I did my clinical internship in a veterans hospital working with Alzheimer's. And my own mom died slowly over a 3-year period with an increasing form of dementia. So I appreciate this. As a person enters that state of dependency and debilitation, it calls on the community to meet it with an ever-growing compassion. And their sometimes complete dependence is this call to bring out the best in our community. So the purpose moves from the ego's sense of activity in the world to the fundamental ground of being that connects us all, and nothing does it quite like vulnerability and utter dependency. How many times I wondered it'd be better for my mom if she just died quickly. How sometimes, I railed against heaven and was asking why, because it was totally breaking my heart. And yet I know that my siblings and I were ennobled by caring for her. My sisters shining, caring for her at home for years. And then when she eventually moved into a facility, they were amazing. It changed who and what we are. And I think my mom would be proud. But it is among the hardest things to experience. As much as I know that from the inside, my words will be impotent compared to the depth of grief and helplessness. But meet it with kindness, with compassion, and discover you can do what you never imagined you could do. With people who have that, nonetheless, they emerge from that darkness, surprisingly, through ritual, like religiously the Lord's Prayer, through music, through touch, through nonverbal communication. There are windows that open, and they are sublime. My heart goes out if you are working with someone or love someone who's facing this.
I just wanted to add too there, David, that your mother was at the nursing home with my mother. I still have that picture on my phone. It oddly took a weird date, and it's always on my phone as the last picture. And it's your mom and my mom in my dad's nursing home the day that he died from dementia.
Wow.
And whenever I open up my photos, there it is. And I know she would be very proud of you guys. And I know my dad, um, going to see him was hard too. Uh, and then I realized I just need to go. I just need to be there. That's all that matters. There's nothing I can do except be with him. And so we made sure someone was there with him every day. In the facility where he lived, we all took a turn. My sister, my mom, my brother lives away, so he didn't get to see him. But it's that being, and I thank you for that perspective because it got me through and it gave me strength to be there for him that day. So thanks.
Thank you, Gail. I do want to note that there was an interesting phenomenon of after-death communication with my mom. This is not uncommon. My sister was driving into the highlands of Cape Breton to go camping with her kids the day after the funeral because she couldn't bear to be in the house and her grief was swallowing her. And as she wept and drove the kilometers, the phone rang, appearing on the car's screen. And it was our mother's name. But mom was not in my sister's contact sheets. Mom didn't have a cell phone, and her home number was registered to my sister, not to her. Very strange. It happened twice. Interesting.
That is amazing. I see that we have a couple other questions coming in. Jean has written, please speak more to your statement, quote, cancer accelerates who and what you are. This is at the core of my anxiety and depression with my recent WM diagnosis. If anything, the diagnosis has called into question who and what I was, I am, and what I will be with WM. The cancer diagnosis is actually doing the opposite of acceleration of self.
So thank you. You have identified the transformative field of chaos in which the ego is being deconstructed and resists that deconstruction. This process cannot be understood. It is not at the level of the mental ego. What is waiting for you is at a deeper level of intelligence and awareness. So trying to categorize it, put handles on the chaos, and make it stop so you can come back to yourself is ironically best done by letting go of control and rallying around you a community and experts who can support you and engaging the material laterally. So use creativity, use art, use music, use dance, use exercise, use nature, use stillness, meditation, use food, use any nonverbal, non-cerebral engagement with your experience here and now. Use yoga. That's a key thing. Now, among those tools, use things that distract you, right? Or do something that makes you blush. It's helpful. You want to deconstruct the ego's illusions of safety and open up to the truth of the anxiety and fear and not knowing and allow it. Don't try to be consistent in this. Nobody is. If you can do it like 5 seconds, great. Try 5 seconds every day. Try 10 seconds once a day and get familiar with this sensation of stepping back and watching your anxiety, watching your depression. Don't fix it. Watch it. Now, you can also engage it clinically through some alternative methods, not cognitive behavioral therapy, but go laterally. Use EMDR, eye movement desensitization or deprogramming and recalibration. Use complementary approaches. So, but it's not a matter of fixing the problem. It's a matter of compassionately engaging with its energy. And it is not simple and straightforward.
What a beautiful response. Thank you so much, David. Emily has written, could you comment on finding a sense of purpose when cancer leaves you in limbo? There will be no recovery, but also no immediate death, and the limbo comes with significant global disabilities.
Yes, dealing with a chronic cancer that can flare up, right, at any time, means you are constantly engaging vulnerability. and you're usually negotiating with mortality and control and quality of life. It is part of those transformative fields of chaos that one must cross in order for the ego to be deconstructed. Again, engage them laterally, not cognitively. Pull upon great spiritual teachers. Rumi, Richard Rohr. Go to Rupert Spira. Oh my goodness. Go to Rupert Spira. Pull him up on YouTube. Watch anything by that man. Great spiritual teacher and such a gentle soul. Focus on your love. Yeah, there's no escape. So what does the wisdom of no escape look like? Penma Chodron. Look to her material. If you want a meditation, you could use Vipassana. So I have this body, I'm not this body. I have this mind, I'm not this mind. I have these feelings, I'm not these feelings, right? This is moving to the witness. Use Tonglen. So this is receiving and giving. Focus on your sadness, depression, anxiety, and pull in more of it from other people. Add theirs to yours. And breathe back your compassion and understanding to them. I understand. Engage it. And then take a break and have good coffee.
Thank you so much, David. And I think that Irene had written some things in there that sort of were addressed in some way with the find her purpose and find herself. So I'm hearing that you keep saying don't engage cognitively, but use the lateral practices, movement and meditation and teachings and anything else you would want to comment about Irene's note in the chat. She does have a lot going on, it sounds like. And
I'm reading there about your father's, and then the feelings afterwards. This is a call of grace for you to be compassionate with yourself now, as much, if not more, than you were compassionate with your father.
That's one thing I think when you say these things, David, that I just wanted to mention briefly is giving yourself permission. I was always very much a doer, had high expectations of myself. I still am, but when I just can't, I say it's okay. You don't have to be the one to do it. This can let go. So I give myself permission to not meet my own standards sometimes. And it helps me give other people permission and help me understand that other people may not always meet my expectations. And so it gives a level of kindness to yourself and to others.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to strive for mediocrity.
Okay.
I mean, chronic pain. If any of you are dealing with chronic pain, please investigate alternative ways, or complementary ways to address it. Like I have my chronic back pain. Yes, I use muscle relaxants, medications, TENS machine, stretching, yoga, meditation, acupuncture, nature. The resource page does not include the meditation tools, but there's information or references to Tonglen, Vipassana, some resources there.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll close our recording and then have maybe 5 more minutes or a couple more minutes if people want to unmute and share directly, and if Gail has anything else she wants to add.